What up, y'all? We got Kolejay.
What's up? What's up?
What up, man?
Chilling.
So we got some people tuned in already. Yeah, here we go. Big shout to everybody that's tuned in. We got Dilly up in the house. Yo. Who else is here? I mean, there's a few people tuned in. We got Tom Rowe. Tommy, hope you're enjoying your EA Sports video games and all that. And we got a bunch of people, man. So we might as well start this off. I'm gonna move this back some. So what's up, y'all? Brolic Army in the house, DJ Rob Swift. We are here with one of the semi-finalists of the Civil War Brolic Army Battle for Supremacy. He goes by the name of Kolejay. DJ Kolejay, what up, man?
What up? It's good to be
Thanks
here.
for doing this. I'm happy to have you here. We're gonna try to start getting more in depth, man, with the DJs that are into competing and my students specifically. I feel like people watch DJs online post videos and may not appreciate the time, energy, effort that goes into preparing, the routines that people see, the practicing and all that, man. So I'm usually the one being interviewed. Now I'm going to be the interviewer, and I'm going to ask you questions, man. So I want to start off with just what made you start DJing? Like, why this art form?
I've always had a love for music. I used to, ever since I was a kid, I used to have, my mom used to have this little floor stereo, you know what I mean? And they had the turntable on the top. That's how I got to be Hamster, because I would just push the buttons between tape deck and, phono and scratch on until I broke the needle. You know what I mean? So it wouldn't last that long. My mom would yell at me, but I've always been into music for for ever since I was probably in 4th, 5th grade. I even had a suitcase turntable too. Back in the day, my mom, she got tired of me breaking the needle, so she gave me the suitcase one. And I folded it up. First day, I had a Nat King Cole album, and then the first day that I used it, I broke the needle. First day trying to scratch on Nat King Cole.
Yeah.
And then so at that time, I thought I was a little kind of like what would you call it back in the day? Like a MacGyver type, thinking I could fix anything. So at that time, I had turned around. I took a regular needle that you use to sew and stuck it in the hole where I broke the needle at. And then it worked. Yeah, so be honest with you, it worked. So ever since then, I've been in music big time. And then I finally got a chance to get my first set of turntables probably when I was maybe like 20. And they weren't really that good. There were some stand turntables, but I liked the art form. And me and another guy at the time, we started getting into DJing. And at that time, you were carrying crates and crates of records. So I got the luxury of learning how to mix and learning BPMs before there was BPMs on Serato. So you get the ear of counting bars and all that other stuff. But it took a long time though. So that's what's helped me to now, once I started getting into the art of the beat juggling and battling and getting into scratching more than just mixing.
You referenced earlier that you scratch Hamster. And let's just explain what that is for people that may be watching and not understand. Every gear setup involves a turntable on the left side of the table that you're set up on, a mixer in the middle, and a turntable on the right side. And the mixer has a crossfader. And there are 2 modes that you can set your crossfader on. The default regular mode, and then there's Hamster. Hamster makes it so that instead of opening the crossfader to the right or my left, if you're going to play a song on the left turntable, and then moving the fader to the right if you want the song to be muted or you don't want any sound. On Hamster style, what you're doing is taking a fader and if you want it muted, the fader is on the side that the turntable is playing. So in my case, if I were playing the left turntable, you'd move the fader to the left side and mute the sound, and then open the fader towards the opposite side, the right turntable, if you wanted sound. How did you, I don't know, like figure out how to juggle that way? Because for me, that's just such a opposite, reverse way of moving. How did you get your juggles to sound as clean, as fluid, and not get confused? That was something that I remember when you and I started training. I was like, man, I'm not sure if you're going to put this up, because everything that I'm going to tell you to do is going to be one way, and you have to think the opposite direction.
Yeah. For me, it was just watching videos, and over years, I just started to be able to take a video and be able to flip it into the way that I need to do it. I mean, I started looking at sometimes of how they open the fader on certain things, but now more or less to me, it's just seeing their movements and seeing when they cut off the fader or when they open the fader. It doesn't even bother me anymore to where I can learn off a normal setup then, you know, with no problem.
Wow, that's crazy.
But I can understand, because I was like, yeah, because when you were the first time that we started and I told you I was hamster, you're like, oh, this is going to be difficult, because some of the things that you're gonna learn to do, you're not going to be able to do in hamster. And I'm like, to myself, I was saying to myself, well, maybe not, but at least I can see how far I can go, because really right now, so far before I got to you and I started watching some of the videos and stuff that you were putting on, I was already starting to flip them into the way that I needed it to be.
Right.
Because actually, the first time I actually met you, I came down to the Queens and seen you, and at that time you were trying to change me to normal. But
right.
I had already been a hamster for like, so you were teaching me the 1-2 pattern as normal, and it was so hard for me. And we did it for like an hour and a half, and it was so hard because everything was so backwards.
Right.
And then so I went home, drove all the way home, drove 4.5 hours home. And as soon as I got home, I got out of my set and I started to try to do it hamster, and I picked it up just like that. So I was like, because I was thinking about trying to change, but at that time I was 10 years in of scratching, juggling, or not juggling, but just trying to mix, and it was so hard to switch up.
Well, that's one of the things that really impressed me about your approach was, although you were coming to me as a novice beat juggler, right? I was still able to give you direction, and then you take it and then apply it to your hamster approach to moving. And I can't stress for people how difficult that must have been for you, although that comes natural to you, the movement of the fader to the opposite direction of the sound or the turntable that you want to project. But still, I think the difficulty must come in being able to reverse my instructions, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like, I'm telling you, all right, I do it this way. I'm open the fader towards the left at this spot. And then you having to be conscious enough to, all right, he's telling me to open the fader. I got to open the fader the opposite direction. I don't know how you put together the math in your head, but that was impressive. And you're having a lot of success in the competition. I guess my next question for you is, not that I want you to give away your strategies for preparing, but I would like to know generically, what did you do to prepare yourself for this battle?
I learned a lot just preparing for this battle, because it's only like my third battle. I tried a couple times for DMC, but ever since this battle was announced, I actually, you know, so sometimes as a DJ, you go through these like music blocks, you know. I mean, I'm glad to say this to everybody that, yes, you will go through times where you feel like you're not progressing. You'll feel like you'll go through that stall stage. And sometimes it's just, you know, everybody will say, well, just take a break or whatever. For me personally, it's sometimes I have my days, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I can go down and be creative, sometimes I don't. And how I prepared for this was, I kind of, at first, when I first heard about it, I wanted to prepare right away. I went down and tried to practice and try to see if I can come up with something. Just couldn't, you know, and it gets frustrating and stuff like that. But for the most part, I have to catch myself on certain days. You know, on certain days, it may just be a different time. It may be 1 o'clock in the morning. It may be 8 o'clock in the morning. You know what I mean? It's all different times, different days. There's no specific day. It's just sometime in my mind I can go down and I can feel like I have something. I can feel like I'm more open, because sometimes, like I said, with the muscle memory, you go down and you just go right in and do the same pattern. Sometimes you get a chance to freestyle a little bit, and that's how you fall into different things. So a lot of my routines I started by putting IG or, you know, videos up, you know, doing minute videos, and sometimes I would just do them for the day. I would work on something and I'd do a video just that day. But going into this battle, I made my first routine, and actually when I did my first routine, usually on a normal IG thing, that would be it. I would just post it and that was it. But it gave me a time, since I got one done early, to keep looking at it over and over again to see what I can change to make it better, because I've listened to that with you. One thing that always sticks in my mind that you've always told me is, you know, in a battle or anything that you know, in that scenario, when you're in any type of battle, DMC, or even, you know, the Civil War battle, the Brolic Army, you want to do something good, and then you want to, and then, you know, to do something to wow the crowd, but then you want to do something even better. Right. And then you want to do something even better. You know what I mean? And that's the concept of what I've been trying to accomplish. And it's all basically about how far you can stretch it without putting too much where it gets crowded and cloudy.
So it sounds like what you're saying is you trained or turned your equipment on to practice when you felt like you wanted to practice. Like, I'm getting the impression from you that you never really forced yourself to train out of habit.
No, I tried to force myself, but what ends up happening is you don't run into things that you want to accomplish. So I use that time of practicing something that I may want to use that. Sometimes I never wait. Can you say, I never waste any of my time. I try to get what's called, that I've learned, is deliberate practice, which is practice that makes it so you can, you know, that you get something out of it, even though you didn't get what you wanted.
Got it.
That's mostly it. I beat myself in the head all the time. I stress. I mean, my family here has got to be, you know, I try to keep it to myself, you know, but it's stressful, you know, for anybody that goes through wanting to be good and wanting to, you know, to be a champ or as far. Like for me, it's as simple as, you know, I want to be as good as I can get. I'll be satisfied with whatever range I can get to, that I can personally get to. I set personal goals, you know what I mean? And so, like right now, my next personal goal would be to compete in another DMC and to even place, just even make the top 6. That's a personal goal for me. I don't have goals as far as first, second, or third yet, because I know the work that it takes to get there, and I'm still working at it. I'm still a student, as you can see.
Right. Well, you're doing great, and I feel like you're making a really good impression on the people that are following the battle. I look at the videos that I post of you, whether it was the preliminary round or this quarterfinal round that you won. Congratulations. You're on to the semis.
Thanks.
The responses, the comments that I see, people are definitely moved by your technique. And I guess my next question to you is, you came to me to train, and most of the people that come to me to train are already experienced DJs. They know how to work the turntables. They could beat juggle, they could scratch. But for the most part, the common thread amongst all the students that I have is they've reached a plateau. They've exhausted all of their creativity, and they're not sure what direction to go in. And then they come to me hoping that I could then point them down a path to grow as DJs. And I feel like when I watch your videos, obviously to a degree, I see some of myself in you because we train together. So I might have said, Kolejay, this is a dope pattern. Take it and have fun with it. And now I'm seeing in the video how you're modifying moves that I might have suggested to you could work for a routine. What advice do you have for a student that's training with me that is learning the same way I taught you? You know, I'm introducing them to certain moves. What advice do you have for them on how to modify, take the moves further? Because people are resonating with your routines because you're doing more. You know what I mean? You're not just, I don't know, settling for the snare pattern, the root moves that I teach, the breakdown pattern. Like, you're doing things to these movements to enhance them. So what advice do you have for students of mine that might feel stuck only learning a move but not enhancing?
My advice is, what I've learned is from the teaching that I've learned from you is when you teach the 10 root movements and stuff like that, there's still another message inside of that. And the important message is to be able, it's almost like, you know, a recipe. You know, the 10 root movements are pieces to what you would need for your recipe. It all depends on what you want to make. You know what I mean? So you don't, you know, so all the times you may not use all 10. You know, you have to pick and choose what you may want to combine, because not everything works with everything. But the most important thing is the inside message that I read off of what these things can do. And once you've shown me taking A and, you know, and going with B, then you're going to get C. You know what I mean? So it's almost like, okay, so if I take D and E, I'm going to get F. You see what I'm saying? And so that's the inner message that a lot of, you know, the students should pick up on. It's not really picking up on trying to learn how to master that exact pattern. You need to understand the pattern and where they fall and where pieces may fall on the, you know, on the side where you're not hearing, where it's landing at, and know your spots. Because what I've started to learn even this year is going around, you know, like most DJs, I can even say for myself, when you're starting off learning beat juggling, you only learn, I call it 12 o'clock to 12 o'clock. You looking at the turntable from a clock perspective. Right. So they only really learn 12 o'clock to 12 o'clock. But when someone wants you to stretch that pattern even further, you're going to probably have to go past 12 o'clock again. And you need to know where the kick, the hi-hat, and the snare fall after that 12 o'clock. And I call it...
So for those watching, 12 o'clock would be this here, right? And as DJs, most of us kind of get used to starting our movements, our patterns from here. And what Kolejay is basically saying is you have to be able to read this from wherever your sounds fall. So if there's a kick that falls here, you shouldn't have to reset to 12 to do a pattern or a movement. You should be able to get used to tracking this mark and land your moves from wherever, and then that opens up other movements.
Yes, it learns, and you know, and I call it, like, a lot of the ways, like, I've never been trained or taught a lot of the stuff, you know, from the beginning time I taught on my own, and sometimes I didn't know the correct terms for it, so I came up with my own terms as far as, you know, past 12 o'clock. So if I was to tell somebody else, you know, where I want the, you know, where they should hit the kick, I would say, okay, it's the kick past 12 o'clock, meaning it's not the first kick, because I call, even in 12 o'clock, I'll call a first kick and then there's a second kick in the 12 o'clock frame. So it depends on which 12 o'clock you can, or what kick you're going to use. Are you going to use the kick at the 12 o'clock? Or are you going to use the kick at the around the 9 o'clock?
Right. So if you have let's take Steezo, our favorite record to beat juggle on, at least train our beat juggling with. The first kick, you might cue it to 12, and the first three sounds are kick, kick, snare, right? Kick, kick, snare. So you might have kick, kick, snare. So depending on what sound you want to manipulate, you know, you're saying, hey, maybe the juggle that I want to do starts from the second kick. And being able to track that second kick on the left turntable and then move to the snare on the opposite turntable, it takes a lot of you have to have eye-hand coordination. Your listening has to be on point. And I always tell people it's your three senses working together: your sense of sight, your sense of touch, and your sense of hearing have to work together in unison. in order to control the mark, move it to where you need to move it, land the kicks, the snares on beat, and sound like a drummer would on a drum kit.
Mm-hmm.
So I hear you.
Yes.
I guess another question I have for you, something that I'm interested in, is how does it feel to record yourself at home? Well, first you create the routine, then you film the routine, then you submit it to me, and you know that there are going to be people judging it, whether it's the judges that I have. Big shout to JF, the Lieutenant General, DJ Double I, the champion from last year of my battle, and Ginsu D, who's a grandmaster. He actually was knighted grandmaster by the one and only Kool Herc. But how does it feel for you to, you know, you pass off this piece of artistry that you created, and now you're going to be judged on it, not just by judges, but by people on social media? Is that nerve-wracking? Is it exciting?
It's a little bit of both, because I'm a shy person, kind of. So I'm like, you know, the only way, even some things, even through my music, it affects my shyness, because how could you get up on a stage and DJ like I used to DJ for, you know, people all the time, thousands of people all the time, and then, you know, and it's just, I guess that once I hand it off, I'm more nervous, because you always second guess yourself. You're always going to be that as a DJ. You're always going to, even I guarantee probably the DMC champions, when they make their championship routine, they're just like, is it good enough? You know what I mean? It's just a part of, you know, just being human, that you're going to run through those stages. And so when I turn my video over, I'm like, I hope it's good enough. I hope it's good enough. You know what I mean? Because it's hard to judge yourself. You know what I mean? So for me, the only way to find out how good I am is to let other people judge me. Yes, nobody likes criticism, but at the end of the day, you're never going to know how good you are if you can't be able to take that criticism.
Right. And two, like, you know, I want to piggyback that by saying, not that I disagree with you regarding, you never know how good you are unless you put yourself out there to be judged. Because to a degree, if you're going to compete, that's what this whole thing is about, is putting yourself out there and being vulnerable and saying, hey, this is what I got. What do you guys think, right? But at the same time, I will say that there are times where even the judges may not get it. And it doesn't necessarily mean, and I say that for everyone out there that's watching, that might be contemplating entering a competition like mine, whether it's online or in person when this whole lockdown ends. There are times where you could have a masterpiece of a routine done and do it, whether it's on an online battle or in person, and the people watching just don't get it. And it may just go over their heads. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not good or that your ideas aren't working. It may just mean that people aren't ready. And it's happened to me when I used to compete in the early days of my career. I remember doing routines, and now looking back, you might log on to YouTube and see the comments, you know, wow, how is it that you lost with that routine? That was just an incredible, progressive, ahead of its time approach to DJing. But at the time, people may not be ready for it. So sometimes you have to take the judgment with a grain of salt, you know?
Yeah, I know. Sometimes it's hard, because that is the truth. Because every time now when I turn in a video, I view it as, okay, how are the judges gonna view it? You know what I mean? Like, how are they gonna view it? I have to put myself in their shoes. What are they looking for? So, but still, you can put yourself in somebody's shoes, but you still don't think the same way as they think. You could still understand what it's like to be in their shoes and understand what they're looking for. And that's what I try to give, the best that I can give, but without trying to do something that I can't do. That's another thing too. You know, you just want to be you. At the end of the day, you don't have to be number one. You may not, like I said, I've been bounced out of tournaments, and I understand it, because I know that I'm not there yet. But that experience does help. And I've always listened to you saying, get the experience. Everybody should be getting the experience. And sometimes it was like, I guess that would work. You know what I mean? But now that I'm starting to get the experience, you start to learn little things in depth. Like now I'm starting to learn how to actually write routines, because before I'm like, I really don't know how to write routines. I just know how to put things together. But after watching some people's routines, not in this battle, but just in general online, you start to see that they're not in routine form. You know, some people are doing a lot of things, but it doesn't flow together. You know, put it together to make because to me, a routine is like a show. You know what I mean? You don't want to go to a show and see a person be a comedian and then he takes a break, then he comes out, he's a basketball player, and then, you know, he comes out, he's a mechanic. You know what I mean? You want him to be, if he's going to be a comedian, give us a good show all the way through.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the key.
Yeah, I think you're onto something very important there. For people watching that are DJs or aspiring battle DJs and want to understand how to curate a set, whether it's an hour-long set that you're playing at a club or a 60-second set that you're executing at a battle, there's an arc that you want to try to achieve in the composition. And what Kolejay's talking about is the storytelling aspect of building a routine, specifically for a battle like mine, the Brolic Army Battle that's going on right now. You could go to my Brolic Arm page, Brolic Army page, YouTube, post the videos every day. But yeah, I like what you're talking about regarding structure, because people might come to me, for example, and want to learn the 10 root moves of beat juggling because they want to understand how to beat juggle. And I could teach you all 10 root movements, but then you got to understand how to put the moves together and tell a story within a routine. And I liken it to the alphabet. Like you have letters, right? A to Z and everything in between. And then you got to take the letters and learn how to form words. Then you got to take the words and learn how to form sentences. And then from the sentences, you build paragraphs. And those paragraphs turn into stories. And I mean, that's something that I feel a lot of people miss out on when they're watching a video of someone like yourself killing it for 90 seconds, and they may not realize that those aren't just moves being executed. There's a rhyme and a reason to why the moves are being executed in the order that they're being executed. There's a reason why you picked that specific song. That specific song lends itself for the moves to work. There are so many different aspects to building a 60-second routine. And I think that goes over a lot of people's heads. And this isn't as easy as it looks. And let me ask you this. What, on the average, how long do you spend putting together a routine like the one you did against Tito Dantana that helped you advance into the semifinals?
That one took me probably form it in some type of way. I may not be able to get it all the way, but then after I made it, I studied it for probably another week. It actually changed it, because at the end of it, I actually went to a juggle, because I didn't actually have a juggle at the end. I actually had some trick mixing, and I changed it to a juggle because after studying it for a while, I just feel it needed a little bit more. I had a lot of wasted time towards the end,
right?
You know, so and try to. And I want to answer one of the questions I see that someone is asking is like, do you hold anything back, or do you just put it all on a line? For me, is like, I don't currently have my, if I ever made it to the final, I don't have a final routine made yet. The only reason why I don't,
for my battle, you don't have one yet.
I don't have a final battle if I made it to the finals. And the only reason is because I can give myself enough time. Like right now, I do have a routine for the next one, so it gives me a little bit extra time. If I ever did make it to the final, I have weeks to now prepare for one. And I think I'm currently I always call it, like, for me, I go through progression stages. Like, I'll progress, and then I'll get it at a standstill for a while. Then I'll start progressing again. So right now I'm in a progressive stage that if I would have made my juggle, say, a month ago, it wouldn't be as good as what I could make a routine now, because I'm currently in a progression. So I'm currently getting better.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know what I could ever do. I try to get a little bit ahead. So you definitely don't want to be at the last minute, routine person,
Right.
where you're like,
The
my
night
video's
before.
due Sunday. Yes. And I got to come up with something on Saturday, because
Right.
it's not going to be. You need to definitely make your video good enough to where you have time to study it for a while and be able to make changes if you want. That's worth it. But to me, as long as I can get a good, I've always told myself, even when I entered at try to enter in the DMCs, is that, you can do it 100% at home. When you get to that DMC, you're going to lose at least 10 to 15% of what you could possibly do it at home. So
from a
if I
level
could
of
go
accuracy, you're saying.
that's right. Yeah. So if I can perform that video at 75% in front of crowds, to me, that's great, because
Right.
it's so hard with the nerves and stuff. And now you get to be able to do it at home and do it on video, but it doesn't make it any easier. I mean, because even any of my routines that I've ever made, that I probably haven't done it enough to do it 100%. It's almost, to me, I've never done anything as far as videos 100%. But I try to get at least a 7 out of 10 to start with.
To that person that asked earlier, do you hold back or do you go all out? What I personally would say is, when you're in a battle, if it's a head-to-head competition, you have to be very mindful of your strategy and understand that there are times where you may have to, like, pull out the big guns early in a competition. For example, my competition, the first round is the preliminary round, and that's more showcase DMC style. And what you want to do is score high points so that you could be seated high in the knockout round of the battle. So the knockout round of the battle is head to head. The preliminary round is showcase. So if you approach the battle, let's say you're a veteran of my Brolic Army Battle, and you've been in it 4 years in a row, and you've made it through to the knockout round every year, your mentality can't or shouldn't be, well, I'm going to make it this year because I made it the previous 4 years. So I'm just going to do this routine that I know will help me get in, and then I'll pull out the big guns later. That shouldn't be the mentality. The mentality needs to be, who's in the battle, study your opponents, and then from there decide what your chances are of making the top 8. And if if the majority of the people that you're competing against or with in that preliminary round are around the skill level that you are, then you need to just go in and go hard. Because I've been in battles where I've seen people underestimate the opponent that they're up against, pull out one of their weaker routines, and then get bounced out. And that person had the potential of actually winning the whole battle, but they just took their opponent too lightly, or the situation too lightly. So I always say, man, you gotta really strategize and be ready to dip into your better routines early if it means you're going to advance, because at the end of the day, the goal is to get to the finals.
Yeah, see, once I seen that, when I got to the email, it actually switched up my order of my because I had personally, before the battle started, I had 2 good solid routines, which are the first 2 that you guys have seen, but they actually were going to be in different orders. The second video was actually going to be first, until I read it, and I was like, and it made sense to me that you were like, don't save your best stuff for last, because you actually want to get seated higher. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to take, out of my personal view, out of my 2 videos, I'm going to take the better of the 2 videos and use that as a qualifying round, because I wanted to seed higher. You don't want to be, not saying anything bad about the 4th or the 5th, but you really don't want to be 4th or 5th.
No,
that's the hardest round in the.
You're not saying anything bad. Just for people out there that are like, well, what are they talking about, higher seeds? In my battle, the higher the seed, the easier the journey to the final round, because the number 1 seed battles the number 8 seed. The number 2 seed battles the number 7. Number 3 battles number 6. Number 4 battles number 5. So if you,
that's the toughest one.
Right. So what Kolejay is saying is, if you seed 4 or 5, then you're like right in the middle of the pack, and that first quarterfinal round, you're battling someone that's strong, and your chances of getting bounced out are higher. But if you see a number 1 or a number 2, you're battling someone who's weaker. If you're number 7 or number 8, it means you're weaker. It's not a diss. It's just what it is. It means you're weaker on technicality.
I just want to I want to clarify. Still, even going against Tito Dantana, I still was worried. So I don't ever take anything for granted. I wasn't automatically thinking, okay, I'm past him. You know what I mean? I still was worried. It actually, when I seen the results today, it just caught me off guard. I'm like, oh, I didn't, you know what I mean? I was at work, so I was like, but I was still worried. I don't take anybody for granted, and I look at it just like me. I could be a number 1 seed, but I could be bounced at any round. So every round that I go on, I don't think like, I'm just waiting until I get to the finals. No, I'm still trying to make it to the finals. You know what I mean? I feel like everybody in the competition has the same chance that I have. You know what I mean? So
I mean, just, you know, any given Sunday, as they say in football, you know, a team can get beat. So although you might be battling a 7th or 8th seed, on paper they're weaker, but that 7th or 8th seed might pull out their best shit around and beat you. So that's the I think that for me is the exciting thing about my competition, is technically you really don't know what's gonna happen week to week. And to close, you know, our interview, man, I feel like the one thing about you, Kolejay, that I just want to say and leave people with that excites me is that you came out of nowhere, bro. Like, you came out of nowhere. Obviously, you have your social media page, you post your little videos, but for the most part, the Brolic Army, we all kind of know who's who and who's doing what, right? And it's not that's not me discouraging anyone from posting videos, but I feel like I have a feeling, correct me if I'm wrong, but I get the impression that you've been, especially in the weeks leading up to my battle, you've been very mindful of what you've been posting, because there are things that I'm seeing in your battle routines that I'm like, fuck, like I didn't know he had that in him. You know what I mean? So it seems like you definitely sat back and you were observing what was happening. And I even remember, like, I'd email you and be like, yo, are you still getting into battle? Like, I haven't heard from you. Like, you'd go quiet, but I get the impression that you were just kind of just, you know, observing and studying the room, so to speak, before you said, all right, I'm in the battle and this is what I got.
I mean, I sit back and actually just, I try to practice and, you know, I mean, as much as I can. And now that I'm in a progression right now, so some of the stuff I started to learn, like you started mature dealing with the social media. Like when I first got on there, yes, you like to, you know, everybody's saying, you know, you got to get out there, you got to get to be heard. But what as you start to learn from like seeing like OG people, you're going to their page and they're not really posting that much. But what you do learn is quality is better than quantity. So, and that's one thing I started off where most of my videos, probably 99% of my videos I have on mine are just from that moment. Meaning I did that today and I'm done with it. I didn't practice for a week, 2 weeks, you know what I mean? So it was just that moment, you know what I mean? But now I've learned from actually starting to write routines where I got a chance to sit on it for a little while, because you get that urge, like you just want to put it out there for people to see, you know what I mean? And you want people to basically be able to see you, but sometimes it's like, you know, you want to just hold it back so you can give your chance to look it over twice, you know what I mean? And see if it's worthy or not. I have probably 50, you know, videos that I just thrown away because I'm just like, I like it, but it's not worthy enough. It's not good enough. It needs more, you know what I mean? So, but it's a struggle and I'm happy to be in this. And I thank you. I mean, I thank you for all the help, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, I started with, you know, it's like a puzzle. I had, you know, 70% of the pieces. I can kind of see what the picture is going to be, but I was missing those key pieces and those things that you showed me, and we've talked, you know, about it, and just the experience. I've, you know, just learning the you know, the 1-2 pattern. To me, that is the bread and butter of everything, like the root of everything. Because if you can not only just learn the 1-2 pattern, everybody needs to understand how the 1-2 pattern works. And once you understand that, you know, once you're on one side and you flash back over to the other side and that sound is there, then you understand the concept of beat juggling, because now you need, your timing determines. I mean, it affects me in life now, because I'll think of something that I know is going to happen 10 or 15 minutes down the line, and it affects my life, because if you don't put something on time now, you're going to find out later that it's off. You know what I mean? So timing is everything. I always use the domino effect word, because that's how I look at it. It's a domino effect. If you do something now and that you don't put it on where it needs to be, later on you're going to pay for it. So you always got to think ahead and think where you're going. And that 1-2 pattern is an example, because if you don't, for example, start that 1-2 pattern the right way, that sound's not going to be there on time when you get to it. You know what I mean?
Real quick.
And there's the snare.
Yeah, what Kolejay's talking about, for those that are like 1-2 pattern, what is that? I teach what I call the 10 root movements of beat juggling. And the second root move is a move that was created by a guy named Steve D, who is considered the father of beat juggling. And this pattern, I call it the snare pattern. And basically, it's hard to explain without me having a, without me being able to demonstrate it in person. But what's happening is you're taking kicks and snares from a record and rearranging the sequence of those kicks and snares. So if I let the needle skate across the record for a bar or two, you hear one sequence, the sequence that the producer of that record intended for you to hear that beat play in. Then you could manually, with your hand, put your hand on the record, and by pulling back, releasing at a certain time, rearrange the sequence of those drum patterns. And that's called beat juggling. And it's a technique that a lot of people come to me to want to learn and understand. And I've taught Kolejay my 10 root moves. And if you watch the routines that he has done in my battle this year, you'll see how he takes a sound, and before you see him manipulate the sound, he's already cued to that spot in the record without using headphones. It's all by sight and instinct. And as you said, kind of knowing my sound is coming, I gotta anticipate and be ready for that sound, and know that I need to introduce it at a certain time and be on time, on point. And people see it done. And I think if you're not versed in beat juggling, you won't appreciate how difficult it is, you know? So for everyone out there watching, I suggest that you watch the battle. Just log on to my Brolic Arm page or my Brolic Army page on Instagram. Check the routines. Big shout to all the competitors that stepped into battle this year. There's 13 amazing students that got in it, and I'm proud of all of them, man. And, you know, good luck to the ones that made it this far to the quarterfinals. You already advanced to the semifinals. You won over Tito Dantana. Big shout to Tito Dantana. That guy tried entering my battle twice, got bounced out, and this year he was like, yo, man, I'm going to give it another shot. And he made it through to the knockout round. And although he's not in the battle anymore because he lost to you, I'm still proud of him, man, because he stuck with it. That, for the most part, is what this competition is about. Win or lose, it's about me seeing you apply the things that I've taught you throughout the year, you know? And in your case, Kolejay, you came to my house. You live in what, Auburn, New York? How far of a drive is that?
It's like about 4.5 hours.
4.5 hour drive to Queens, New York City. We trained. We did a few Skype lessons. And now I get to see you apply what I taught you, and you're taking what I taught you to the next level. And that's what this is about, man. And I'm super proud of you, dude, and good luck in the battle. And
thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. And thanks for doing this. This was like something that you and I just decided to do today, to just share with people what goes into these videos, man. Because again, I think it's easy to overlook the complexity of building a routine and then filming it and all that stuff. So thanks for doing this. Big shout out to everyone that tuned in to this IG Live.
Shout out to the soldiers.
I'm sorry?
I was just saying, shout out to all the soldiers out there.
Yeah, man. Shout out to all the Brolic Army soldiers. Keep practicing. To all the people that are watching and inspired to want to do something like this, man, don't think you can't learn this, because all of us, myself included, started at ground zero. And if you practice and you study this art, I learned in a time when there was no YouTube, no Instagram, and you had to just pick it up by ear, you know, and figure it out.
Yeah, that's got to be hard.
It is. But the material's out there, man. So study up and practice, man. But yeah, Kolejay, thank you very much. Peace to everyone that tuned in.
Thank you.
And tomorrow we're going to do this again with whoever wins tomorrow's battle. I believe it's DJ Boy Scout against Select the Monty. So peep that tomorrow. I'll post it at noon. In the meantime, just check out the battle, y'all. Peace out.
Thanks.
Right on, man.
Peace.